Hi there. My name is Mohan Murali. Welcome to Bro, Peace America. I usually do my videos in Telugu, but whenever I want to reach larger audience, I also do some of them in English. This video is about what I see as an impending, or maybe it's already here, fascism in America. This is in the context, in the background of whatever is happening in Los Angeles, the protests against ICE and Border Patrol agents, and President Trump's proclamation that he's sending National Guard, 2,000 National Guards into Los Angeles without the request from the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. First, it reminded me of a historic event, Reichstag fire. That's a video put out by United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. These are the scenes from Los Angeles, California, June 7th, 2025. That's ICE, Border Patrol, Los Angeles police quelling the protesters against deportations in Los Angeles City. Though it may seem little disconnected, on the same day this happened in Washington, D.C. Those are RB tanks arriving into Washington, D.C. via freight train to be deployed for the birthday parade on June 14th in Washington, D.C. And they were later deployed in D.C. streets that night. I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but I want you to connect all those visuals. And speaking of birthday parades, it reminded me of some birthday parade that happened in 1930s. As Mark Twain famously said, history does not repeat, but it often rhymes. The big picture issue here is that President Trump ordered National Guard into Los Angeles without Governor Gavin Newsom asking for it. Why is that important? Let's first get into the nitty gritty, like in a big picture, what happened, do a recap, and then try to connect the dots and make sense out of it, okay? So I'm going to quickly browse through this New York Times live updates. Trump orders National Guard to LA to quell immigration protests. That's the major headlines. And below it is, it's a series of updates from New York Times. So it's a very good resource. So here's the latest. Third day protests against immigration raids were expected to take place in Los Angeles area on Sunday, hours after President Trump took extraordinary action of ordering at least 2,000 National Guard members to assist immigration agents clashing with demonstrators. So Senator Bernie Sanders weighed in. Overnight, Los Angeles Sheriff Department said it had arrested one person over the protests in Paramount. So this very particular line is the one that I immediately struck me. Oh, what happened at Reichstag? So those are the dots I was trying to connect in my mind. So there is a lot happening, but if you were to believe the administration, the Trump administration, like entire Los Angeles is filled with riots. Yes, the news is overwhelming, but where are these riots happening is a very important data point you have to consider. This is the map of Los Angeles, city of Los Angeles, and the main hotspot is Paramount, California, which is majority dominated by Hispanics. And there are other places. There are two other places where clashes occurred on Friday in downtown Los Angeles. So you have to put that in perspective about whatever is happening. But yeah, pictures look pretty grim. And then there are some violence, and then there are some violent incidents, cars burned, and then there is tear gas fired at protesters, etc. And here is, yeah, these are some violent outbursts by people. National Guard to arrive in LA within 24 hours, federal officials say. This is the US Attorney in California. Now, let's switch gears from news to rhetoric. The rhetoric. This is Saturday, 6/7/25 at 5:25 p.m. President Trump says, if Governor Gavin Newsom, I'm not going to use the nicknames he is using, and Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles can do their jobs, the federal government will step in and solve the problem, riots and looters, the way it should be solved. This is what he was saying. Trump is always fascinated with stuff, rhetoric. Like, remember in 2020, he was saying something like, hey, when the looting starts, shooting starts, right? On that statement, he was confronted by a Fox News host, nonetheless, and she asked him a direct question: why that kind of rhetoric?
When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Why those words?
So that's an expression I've heard over the years, and it
Do you know where it
really
comes
means
from?
I think Philadelphia, the mayor of Philadelphia,
No,
from what
it comes from 1967. I was about 18 months old at the time. Everybody's shooting Wiki because they probably got it wrong. But it was from the chief of police in Miami. He was cracking down, and he meant what he said. And he said, I don't even care if it makes it look like brutality, I'm going to crack down.
So it's basically performative cruelty. On the same concept of deploying National Guard into states without the request of the governor, there is what is called federalism, states' rights. Back in February 2024, the current Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, said this.
And remember, Democrats have been encouraging this president. They've been encouraging President Biden to come after our states' rights. They've been talking about federalizing our National Guard, which would be the first time in American history that we would have a president that would pay soldiers to stand down, to actually not protect America. And if he's willing to do that and to take away my authority as governor, as commander-in-chief of those National Guard, boy, we do have a war on our hands.
Wow.
Now, Kristi Noem, when she was not the DHS secretary, she's not okay federalizing National Guard. By the way, Biden never did that. Now they're okay. So California Governor Gavin Newsom responded, the federal government is moving to take over the California National Guard and deploy 2,000 soldiers. That move is purposefully inflammatory and will escalate tensions. And he's right. This is intended to escalate tensions. First and foremost, there is a statute that prevents the president from doing it, Posse Comitatus Act. I'll get to that in a minute. And the second, it is constitutional violation of the state's rights. There are a few statements issued by the police chiefs and the elected officials in Los Angeles that kind of raise their people's eyebrows. Police Chief Jim McDonnell releases a statement after an ICE raid earlier today saying that his entire department will not cooperate or assist ICE in any way. He implied that his troops may be used against federal agents. Los Angeles County Sheriff himself, Robert Luna, releases a statement saying they will not comply with mass deportation efforts. And they also mentioned in another statement, most parts of the city are peaceful. And that kind of doesn't seem to add up with what you see the images. It may very well be because of the nature of the social media. The ones with real conflict seem to be getting more attention than the ones that are peaceful. So that possibility is there, but also to some extent they may be downplaying the seriousness of the situation. That possibility is also there. We have seen this movie before. Back in the summer of 2020, at the peak of George Floyd protests here in Washington, D.C., President Trump staged a drama. The reality TV president staged a drama. It unfolded like a TV crime drama where the president was hero. Remember that disgusting incident where he had to hold that Bible upside down in front of St. John's Church? And that is when General Milley came out and pretty much apologized for his participation in that bizarre and grotesque event. Since we are talking about fascism, it is not enough to talk about just Hitler. We have to talk about the Goebbels and the Himmlers that enabled Hitler. Here is Todd Lyons, acting director of US Immigration and Customs Enforcement. In this bit, he is talking about protecting the ICE agents. Listen carefully.
Here's what I have to say to Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, and anyone else stirring up the outrage about what ICE does. These are real people with real families you're hurting with your ridiculous rhetoric and inflammatory comments.
What he was implying is somehow Hakeem Jeffries wanted to dox the ICE agents or whatever it is. That's not what Hakeem Jeffries said in any way. He's just mischaracterizing what Hakeem Jeffries said. Here is another enabler, Tom Homan, the border czar, talking about protecting ICE and Border Patrol.
And, like I said many times, these elected officials or these non-government organizations, they can't cross the line either. I mean, we got people like, Hakeem Jeffries saying he's going to dox ICE employees. ICE agents out there with masks on. They're wearing masks to protect themselves and their families because they've been doxxed, their families been doxxed, their life's been threatened, their families have been threatened.
Did you hear that? ICE agents are masking themselves to protect themselves and their families. So masks for ICE agents, okay. That's what he's saying. By the way, whenever I see Tom Homan, he reminds me of Baron Vladimir Harkonnen in Dune. One more time, remember what Tom Homan said. He wants ICE agents to wear masks. President Trump tweeted this at 2:41 a.m. this morning. Great job by the National Guard in Los Angeles after 2 days of violence, clashes, and unrest. By the way, they announced the deployment of National Guard yesterday, and they haven't arrived yet. And he already claiming victory for National Guard, which hasn't been deployed yet. We have incompetent governor, blah, 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 all the BS. These radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. Also, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. Tom Homan wants the ICE agents who are armed, not just with guns, with all kinds of military gear, they can wear masks, but the civilians protesting, whether, violently or peacefully, in whichever way, they cannot wear masks. First of all, you cannot do that. I mean, you cannot prevent people from wearing masks, and you don't have that kind of authority. This is fascism. Now let's get into the proclamation itself. Numerous incidents of violence and disorder have recently occurred and threaten to continue, blah, 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 to the extent that protests or acts of violence directly inhibit the execution of the laws, they constitute a form of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States. Rebellion against the government of the United States, which is the pretext for invocation of the Insurrection Act, which he did not do. So he is using the provisions of the Insurrection Act without invoking the Insurrection Act. And it went on to say, the Secretary of Defense may employ any other members of the regular armed forces as necessary to augment and support the protection of federal functions and property in any number determined appropriate in his discretion. So he's basically giving full authorization that he could do only by legally invoking Insurrection Act without invoking the Insurrection Act. George Conway retweeted this. They are doing this because the Insurrection Act sounds cool, edgy, but they can't actually justify using the Insurrection Act. It's silly action by an insecure administration desperately to seem manly and powerful, and performative nonsense bullshit. It should be criticized relentlessly, but it should also be laughed at. Criticize and laugh at. But I am criticizing, I'm not laughing, I'm angry. Earlier I said about the enablers. The FBI director, Kash Patel, hit a cop, you're going to jail. Doesn't matter where you came from, how you got here, or what movement speaks to you. If the local police force won't back our men and women on the thin blue line, we at FBI will. F you, Kash Patel. Your men and women, the MAGA men and women, January 6, 2021, 1,500 of them convicted, put in jail, or charged. You pardon them, you let them go. And look at this. They were hitting this cop here. They were hitting this cop here. By the way, whatever has happened in LA over the last 2-3 days, that is minuscule compared to what happened at January 6th. The discussion is never complete until we talk about Santa Monica Goebbels, the de facto president of the United States, Stephen Miller. And I just checked his Twitter feed. He's having orgasms about all these things, whether it is the arraignment of Abrego Garcia and a whole bunch of things that are happening. All these developments are his wet dream come true, some of which may have happened, some of which they manufacture, some of which they just make shit up to justify, possibly, eventually, invoke the Insurrection Act and suspend habeas corpus. And that's what he's getting at. So there is a lot of shit here. I don't want to get into every one of those tweets Stephen Miller has put out or retweeted. Here is J.D. Vance talking about one of the main technical issues in the immigration. So this guy sounds like a holier than thou bullshitter and also condescending prick. One of the main technical issues in the immigration judicial battles is where Biden border crisis counted as an invasion. So they are using this word invasion repeatedly to somehow come up with a justification to invoke the Insurrection Act. This is where Stephen Miller gives out the game. He basically is confirming a report came earlier. Get to the report in a minute, but he's saying, Charlie Kirk says, on Wednesday, ICE broke its nationwide arrest record. Tuesday, June 3rd, 2,200 arrests. Wednesday, June 4th, 2,368 arrests. This is what we voted for in November. He voted for it, and a whole bunch of MAGA voted for it. What this graphic of 2,368 confirms is a report that came out a few days ago in Washington Examiner. He apparently yelled at ICE and Border Patrol agents like, why aren't you at Home Depot? Why aren't you at 7-Eleven? Trying to find people looking for work and then deport them. He's not happy with the number of deportations being so low because they want to have 1 million deportations in a year. That would come to about 3,000 deportations per day. And ICE is desperate to hit that target. That is why you see this escalation in the last 1 week or so. I hope all these guys rot in hell. Ladies and gentlemen, this coming 7 days is going to be very critical, especially June 14th when Trump's birthday parade is arranged with $45 million in Washington, D.C., where it is destined to ruin all the Washington, D.C. streets, which are pathetic to begin with. I live here. I know what I'm talking about. So you saw those videos I said, like put them all together and then see what's happening for yourself. And if I sound a little agitated, I am. If I sound a little angry, I am. And if I sound a little concerned, I am. Fearful, maybe slight. But for now, I am fighting. My fight is to educate enough people to see the light of the day, what is happening, and put it all in context. Don't fall for the bullshit, the right-wing propaganda, the Santa Monica global propaganda. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. I'll put more videos like this.
I'm only here for the party. Trust me, we just getting started.